It's one thing to know about the power of the mind, but to put that will into action is the most difficult thing for most of us. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick, and my guest Theo Wilson is an expert at doing just that. With his book, The Law of Action, he inspires us all to take that next crucial step. Theo, you know, I caught you on a TED Talk, and as I told everybody out here, once I did, I had to start reading every one of your books. You grabbed me, and I'm so glad you're here on Between the Lines.
Barry, it is great to be here, and I'm flattered that I could come and share my book with you in this space, so yeah.
Well, let's start sharing your book with us. And the thing that caught my attention first was when you said, nothing in existence is fair. You either take action or action takes you.
That's pretty close. That's when I was studying the spiritual text, this law of action, the law of attraction. You remember The Secret dropped in like 2006, and everybody was talking about that. There was a missing component I felt, and it was the component that I grew up with, and that's the violence component. There's this thing that happens in certain spaces where unpredictable acts of aggression happen regardless of what you were trying to attract or what you were trying to focus on or what you were trying to bring into your awareness. What is that? What is the force behind that? And so I started asking myself, is there a spiritual component to that too? And when I started to discover it, that's why I had to write the book, because I felt a few things in the secret community were out of context.
Well, you even actually say that evil itself, is it almost a misdirected instinct?
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, because we don't, and by the way, you're not giving slack to evil in any way. I want to make sure about that. Now, you know, you're not one of these moral relativists. You know that there's bad and good.
There's good,
But is it just a misdirection? And that was an interesting way of looking at it.
I think that human beings often forget that we are the apex predator of the planet. We are more bad than the saber-toothed tiger, than the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the shark, the wolf, the lion, the killer whale, you name it. We are more dominant than all of those predators. So what happens when human beings have these big brains and we can't tame our predatory instincts? We find other things to prey upon rather than the physical being of somebody else, and some people, the actual bodies of people, right? This predatory instinct is the basis of what we call evil. And you're right, I give it no slack. I understand that there is a huge amount of good that gets lost when we don't check that instinct. But if we contextualize it correctly and remove it, not permanently, but temporarily from the moral framework of right and wrong, good and bad, and see what's driving us neurologically, I think we'll have a better chance at creating a more harmonious world once that instinct is in check.
I want to read a line directly from your book, because I thought that I believe this always, but never heard it expressed this way. The possible takes precedence over the proper. Now, we know that that's not what should necessarily do. We want the proper to take, but in the real world, that is what often happens.
It does. Man, listen, I heard a comedian once remark how insane it is that human beings got out of the food chain, right? We don't have to run something down every single time we want breakfast, lunch, or dinner, right? But that happens all over the planet. And as far as we know, all over the universe, right? So we evolved in that context, right? Where what's the point of legs if there's not something to run after or from? You know what I mean? What's the point of any part of evolution at all? The threat of death, the threat of predation is always there. And unfortunately, it's what drives this whole thing. Now let's put that in context, because violence has its place, but only to create balance in the universe. I'm not talking about human affairs. I'm talking about the universe. Now we get to put in context what's going on in our world in terms of the things that we don't find that pleasant. That's why I had to address it in the very first chapter. The very first chapter addresses violence. And then we get to build on the other flowery stuff, you know what I mean?
Well, it is because fear, the natural instinct, that is to either fight or to flight. And
exactly.
you know, and so it has to be the first thing that is addressed in everything we do. And, you know, but you say, and this is what I think is profound, is everything's always in motion. The universe is always in motion.
Correct.
Therefore, no matter where we are in our mental state, in our physical state, we too can always be in motion and always move in whatever direction. Hopefully, as again we go back to the proper, not just the possible.
Yeah. You know, Albert Einstein said, and I'm paraphrasing here, one of the most important decisions that you have to make is whether you live in a helpful or a harmful universe. Now, we just started talking about all the harmful things, right? But as I said, it's there to coordinate a balance. And so I say that it's working for my highest good. All of this motion that's constantly going on, how can I use what's going on? How can I use the momentum of the events of the world to my advantage? And I think that's part of what me practicing that got me in front of you here today.
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the words you use to describe that is perhaps life itself is the biggest echo chamber we know. But the problem is when we're giving out that echo, as Tom Petty says, the waiting may be the hardest part. It doesn't always come back at the rate we want it to.
Exactly. And that's so then that's the chapter that talks about karma. Everybody's like, what goes around comes around. True. But the world we live in, there's a delayed effect. You can put something out and you never know when it's going to cycle back into your world. I know so many cats that was into street life that literally had to keep on creating new things in their lives to out-sustain the echoes that their former life had already made. If they could not do that, they were often consumed by a former echo, i.e. an event that they set in motion many, many years ago that they could not overcome.
You don't have to be in the street, brother. I'm telling you, it's happened to me yesterday.
Right.
Literally, I fell off the wagon, so to speak. I'm not talking about the drinking wagon or anything like that, but I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and you get impatient. That is the nature of our humanity as well, is we are an impatient group. We are an impatient species.
Correct. And so now you have to figure out, okay, that's where that faith, is this working in my favor, in my highest favor, not in my most petty favor, meaning the things that I'm invested in that may not necessarily be the best for me either, and also could cause harm to other people. The grand scheme of things may be conspiring against that. But if I'm at my best and if I'm aligned with that, then if it's not happening in the time that I want it to, I have to trust it's going to happen in the time that it has to.
Theo, if I could only trust that trust
it's the hardest thing.
More.
I understand.
I mean, it's very much the hardest thing. It's really the hardest thing for me personally to do. It just is. But you know, you gave me a lesson that I think helped me out even in my distraught moment. And it was when you say that the universe isn't out to get you, it is out to teach you.
It's out to teach you. Think about this. If the universe wanted you dead, you'd be dead, brother. You're not big enough. You're not strong enough. None of us are. You see what I'm saying? And I know that I'm not on the same level as this dude in terms of education, but when Neil deGrasse Tyson, he talks about how, and I quote him in the beginning of the book, saying there's all this stuff in the universe, these asteroids that are colliding against planets, you know what I mean? And all this stuff that can destroy us at any moment. So my question was, well, why doesn't it? Because all of the things that support life as well were also floating in the vacuum of space and coalesced at Anywheresville universe and came together as the Earth. And we could not sustain our lives if it didn't want us alive. And that is something that I have to remind myself of in that moment too. So I understand that that it is a balance. Now, since we are sentient, we figure out how to wield the most pertinent habits of the universe to our favor and hopefully to benefit everybody else.
Habit. Yeah, you just brought it up, and that's where I wanted to go next. Because as we said, developing that patience is very difficult. But you let us know, and I've experienced this myself, so this is, should we say once you say it and I agree, it's proof then?
Yeah, it's total proof.
and I had Neil on the show, and he said the same thing too,
so really?
We're
awesome.
okay.
Nice.
Anyway, it is developing that patience when you can finally make it a habit. Almost takes the willpower you need away. You're almost able to relax because you're no longer forcing it. It's now part of your nature, and you seem to think that when that happens, that's when things can go much smoother.
I'm telling you, man, like everybody says, and I mean, you know, I'm into fitness, you know what I mean? And everybody's like, it takes so much willpower. It don't. It just takes enough willpower to start, to set the habit forth. And once you set the habit forth, you feel bad if you don't do it. Like you feel weird, like, oh my God, like your muscles are screaming, why do I look like this, right? So you have to say, okay, I'm gonna exert just enough to make this a part of my life consistently, and then this becomes the flow of my life. And I think that that's one of the things that's beautiful about human beings. We're so complex. We're in fact too complex. But the fact that we have the ability to set habits, both good and bad, can be our greatest harm, our greatest help that comes from within us.
I love the Japanese term, the Kaizen Way, because that means small steps. And you parallel that when you say these, and I think this has to hold true when you're developing your habit. Decisions are not made by destinies, are not, I want to use your words exactly. Destinies are made not by one big decision, but by many small choices on a daily basis. And what better way to develop a good habit, because we do want to specify what type of habit, than that.
You know what, brother? It's been such an insanely up and down journey even to get here. Like, I can't even believe I'm here. Like, I'm kind of bugging about this a little bit, because in order to write the Law of Action, the book, I had to practice it. Writing the book itself had to become something that was second nature to me. And I talk about like sacrifice and things I like to do. I like to go out. You know what I'm saying? I was at the club. I sing. I'm doing karaoke all the time, right? And I said, okay, what am I not doing while I'm doing this? Is my book coming into fruition any faster? And so by literally practicing what was in the book got written. Like once I found the Law of Action, it literally made itself a reality to the point where I'm like here. And there was a thing in my brain like a year ago, you know?
Well, I'm going to have to steal, again, you're here because I love the way you talk. So I also love the way you write.
Thank you.
And here I think is something that so many people today forget, and I know that's why you wrote this. Is your passion rooted in a desire to be worshiped or a desire to serve?
Yeah. Listen, man. I'm an actor. I have been trained as an actor. I got my degree in theater performance. And I said, all right, am I here because I want adoring fans like falling at my feet and autographs and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? All of that is awesome if that's what you want. But be honest with yourself about it, though. Tell yourself the truth. That's what I want. I want the adoring fans. That's different than being excellent. That's different than being so committed to the craft, you don't care if you ever get an Oscar in your life. I've met actors like that who are just knee-deep dug in to the craft of creating characters and bringing them to life. And to them, they are the stars. To me, they are the stars, because those are the people who are true to what it was all about in the beginning. So yeah, just be honest with yourself about what you're doing, because if you're doing it to serve, you're probably going to be doing it better than the person who just wants worship from it.
Well, that's why you say these words, forms don't last, but the consequences do.
Yeah.
So if you are doing it to serve and not be worshiped, that's the consequence that you want to occur. If you're doing it for that other negative, and again, I don't need to get into all the theological reasoning behind it, but you're misdirecting your own good energy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, what makes the most sense to me is that you're always in touch with the fact that you're gonna die. Like, and I had a season in my life where I had to bury 14 friends and family members. 14 friends and family members. And one thing that comes to you, you go to enough funerals, you realize that yours is coming. It's gonna come. So now that it's going to be here, your form will not last, but the things that you do impactfully they will reverberate. And I mean, we're talking about mathematically, the butterfly effect, it's scientifically proven it will reverberate out into infinity. So how about you leave something behind? How about you leave this place a little bit better than you found it in the best way that you can? Because you never, like, I swear to goodness, there's so many examples of this, and I try to lay it out there. You never know when that seed that you put on the wind will land and create something that you never believed possible. You have to make sure that you put it out there to serve other people first, though.
I know, but we go back, Theo, to that patience again, and that's what you're smiling because
I still struggle with it.
Am I right? Everyone does.
I still struggle. Yeah.
You know, and we sit there and we know we're planting these seeds.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were, hopefully at least we're planting. Well, you know, you say something in the book, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't want to try to even find it. But
it's all good.
No matter what we're doing, we are here. And but just by our being here, our existence makes existence.
Yeah, exactly, man. Look, life in terms of like existence itself is like this crazy gift. It is a roller coaster ride. And it's one of those things where you start to realize that, okay, if I don't take this seriously, I'm going to waste it. I don't want to waste it. Like, that was the most salient thing from all those funerals sitting in. I don't want to waste it. If I can be of service, then if I get accolades and praise and stuff like that, that's fine, I guess. But, you know, a wise man said, if you believe the accolades, you got to believe the critics too. You know what I mean?
So wait, we can't go there. I've read too many of my YouTube comments. There's just no way we can go there.
I seldomly believe either. I just look at the effect that I cause. You know what I'm saying? Because there's people who worship me, there's people who hate me. If you ain't doing me immediately like damage, I don't care. I just want to make sure I make somebody better along the way.
Well, that's why, if I could be bold enough to say, the key to this whole book is what you call character.
Yeah.
Character is the foundation this principle is all built on.
And that's something that we always gonna be working through, brother. You know what I'm saying? Me realizing that I write that and realizing now that I'm also held to that standard there. So I always turn inward first, right? But at some point, you got to be who you say you are, at least at some level. Like when you buy Fruit Loops, there's got to be Fruit Loops there. Like if you say that you're this, that, and the third, like eventually you have to be that, or else everything begins to break down. Everything begins to dissolve. And I think that one of the crazy things about the human brain is that we're so clever. We find shortcuts around every good thing that could be here for us. And when we do that, like we lose something in that. And I'm telling you, like I said, not a finished product with that, but the times that I've been true to that principle, my life has elevated. And I think that we lose that.
And the principle is different because when you know, it's what was the great waiting for Godot. That's what you're doing otherwise. You could sit there and think the universe is just going to come to you. And by the way, may grace it happen. You know, blessed be. It could. But if you're just going to be waiting there and not taking action, you know, as the classic line, luck is the residue of design, and design is action.
But the thing about it is that it's got to work everywhere on earth. Will your spiritual principles work also like in the Congo? Will your spiritual principles also work like in Juarez? Like, will they work in Bangladesh? You know what I'm saying? Will they work in the slums? What works there? And I said that a lot of this stuff I don't feel would work there because you have, for example, the desire to attract a shiny red bike. Well, that's fine when you got Walmart. Where's the Walmart over there, brother? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What would work over there? The elbow grease principle. You know what I mean? And what that elbow grease principle makes of you. What does it make of you when you apply it? The strength that comes from being that. Because once somebody conquers, I met people, for example, from Sudan who survived some war zones, right? When they come to America, they've got this strong personality, this joy, this exuberance, this strength of character that propels them past any obstacle that could ruin any American's day. Because they developed that in the cauldron of oppression over there, and they brought it over here and shined.
You know, you said develop, and I want to pull up one of your quotes again.
Yeah, man.
Because developing the habit of true introspection, healthy questioning is the way that that happens.
Yeah.
But this is what I always like to warn my viewers, and I pray that you will agree.
Okay.
When we do go inward,
Yeah.
and when we go through self-introspection, the thing I sometimes fear is I don't want people to, even if they see the negative within them, feel bad. I want them to feel, not that they shouldn't change it, but with kindness to the self. And everything I hear you talk, and when I say on the TED Talks of all of your books, you seem to believe that you must look inward, but with at least a sense of kindness to yourself.
Yeah, to some level, you got to cut yourself a break, man. Like, a lot of us went through some trauma. A lot of us got hurt by, like, a parental figure. You know, a lot of us got hurt early on in our lives, and that propelled us to act in ways that are not healthy, right? You will be forced to take responsibility for any of those actions anyway. But what's going to happen is that when you go introspective, the voice of compassion should also accompany the voice of discernment. So that it's just not the voice of judgment. You know, that inner judge, you know, I dealt with that tremendously. I dealt with that on so many levels. I would cuss myself out. I would talk, boy, if you could hear the things that I said to myself in the privacy of my own mind when I felt that I had fallen short of the mark. That's not healthy, but it's the content that you bring from it is often necessary. You just have to balance it.
Well, you know, that's where I think when you use the term resistance,
Yeah.
you say that it breeds persistence.
Yeah.
So we can take that, even that negative talk, if it's there, turn it around and let, as you say, the resistance of it be the gift.
Yeah. So I talk about ancient Egyptian mythology. And ancient Egyptian mythology has figures that we might kind of recognize. And one of the figures in ancient Egyptian mythology is Set, who the Hebrews called Set-an, who became Satan. Now, Set, in the Egyptian context, was not the enemy. He was the opponent. That's a key distinction, because resistance is out there. Destruction is out there. Hard events are out there. But what's the point of a push-up without gravity? What's the point of any boxing match but to just find yourself in a place where you are the best that you possibly can be? So if you understand that the resistance principle is going to be against you no matter what you do, you embrace it when you realize that it's there for you to overcome. And therefore, it shouldn't be denigrated, shouldn't be talked bad about. It's to be embraced and to be eventually conquered.
But also, as you so eloquently put it, whittle away at the unnecessary stuff.
Oh.
Get that out of the way.
That's one of the beautiful things about opponents and enemies. That's why it's so necessary to see the world from the perspective of somebody who doesn't like you. You know what I mean? Because they're going to be able to take a lens at you that you can't take at yourself because you got self-compassion. Let's say they don't like you for real. You know what I mean? Somebody from the opposite side of the political spectrum may have a keen insight into a blind spot that you have. And if you don't listen to what their perspective is, you're going to miss out. And therefore, you won't get better at whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, the negative resistance can whittle you down and refine you, but that's also there for your good. So once again, the universe is cooperating for your highest good.
I'm going to tell you something, Theo.
Yeah.
Almost every lifelong important lesson I learned came from someone I did not like.
Straight
I know.
up.
I'm not saying that I didn't learn from friends. I didn't learn from family. But the most deepest parts, when I look back, by the way, you don't always. This is again the echo. You don't always see it right away. Some of the people I really didn't find good in or out, I learned the most. And it's not even by doing just the opposite, as the old Seinfeld show goes.
Exactly.
It was that you don't even know sometimes where wisdom can come from.
Yeah, and therefore you can't discriminate of the source that it will come from. You know, sometimes we like to denigrate the message because we don't like the messenger. And I'll be like, that's the one that you need to pay attention to. Simply because of the fact that you still in a universe, you are a part of this, and so are they. They are a part of this too. And when you see that that's actually a voice coming from another side of the same universe that you live in, you realize that it ain't even about them to begin with. They could be flawed or whatever. But if you can take that and incorporate that into your own behavior, your own action, your own lifestyle, you win anyway. So you don't really lose anything if you actually go down the road of pay attention to what your enemies are saying, because they're just there to make you better to begin with.
Theo, I do listen to you for hours when I watch the TED Talks, but I could listen to you, but our time is up. So
That's all right. That's all right.
I got to end with these words, though,
Yeah.
and these are your words. If our lives never make the news, whether we live as hermits or heroes, the fact that we took up space and used this planet's resource makes a mark. Thank you, Theo,
No
for
problem,
making
brother.
a mark.
Thank you very much
My
for having
pleasure.
me on here, man.
It's my pleasure, and thank you all for joining us. Now, before Theo leaves, I would like to leave you with these words from the law of action. Once we exist, we are an investment of the universe. Your life will leave a mark, large or small. The delay just makes this hard to see at times. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between your marks, large or small, remember, you are an investment in the universe, and the universe needs you. Thank you, Theo.
No problem, brother.
To connect with Barry, like him on Facebook and follow him on Twitter @Barry Kibrick. And to contact Barry directly, view past episodes of Between the Lines, and read his weekly blog, visit us at barrykibrick.com.